I think in terms of nation building differing across contexts, the first distinction I would make would be between the US and indigenous peoples elsewhere around the world. In the US, when we're talking about nation building, we're often focused on federally recognized Indian tribes with a political identity as well as a territory over which the tribal government can exercise sovereignty. In that setting, nation building often has to do with institutions of governance, as well as, of course, economics and culture and otherwise. When I work with indigenous peoples in other parts of the globe, in particular Latin America, Asia, the Nordic countries, the situation is usually different. First of all, the language is usually self-determination versus sovereignty. And I think that's a slightly more flexible term, and it's a term that grows out of the indigenous human rights movement. And it isn't necessarily focused on political identity, and it isn't necessarily derivative of a territorial jurisdiction framework. And so nation building in those contexts may be more, in some ways it may be more dynamic. People are really drawing from their cultures in an organic way to navigate circumstances around them, but it's not necessarily always tied to certain political boundaries or some of the features of indigenous nationhood that we talk about in the United States.